Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're not just tiptoeing through dusty old pages, we're storming barefoot across the misty wilds of ancient Britannia, where the bonfires crackle, the Romans look nervously over their shoulders, and your hair is probably tangled with both twigs and raw determination. Yes, you pull your cloak tighter, because you're about to become Boudica, the rebel queen with more fiery energy than an espresso shot in a thunderstorm. Before we gallop into this midnight saga, quick fun fact, the Romans thought trousers were barbaric. So if you're wearing pants right now, congratulations. You've already started a revolution. Tonight, we'll tramp through mud, laughter, tragedy, and the kind of sibling drama that makes palace intrigue look like a tea party for toddlers. If you're listening in Hanoi at 1 Somcho a.m. or Madrid at 8 p.m., leave a comment and tell me where you're hiding from the Empire. It always cracks me up to picture who's curled up under the covers, secretly channeling their inner warrior queen. Now, flick off the lights, let that old ceiling fan hum like a distant war drum, and join me before the fireflies scatter, and before the Romans bolt their doors. Let's ride into the dream your life as Boudica, and a little bit more. You wake in the hush just before sunrise, the kind of dawn that presses a cold thumbprint right between your shoulder blades and makes the reeds shiver along the edge of the fen. The hut is still dark, except for the faint gold flicker beneath the door, a fire someone stoked with careful, sleepy hands. Trying not to wake the dog or the spirits for a moment. You forget the weight on your chest. You're just another Iceni girl in the wild east of Britannia, where the fog is thick as milk and the world smells of wet earth and wood smoke. Stretch, yawn, instantly regret it as the cold air slaps your bare arms. Out you go, stepping onto frost-silvered grass, toes curling, your breath puffing dragon-like into the haze. The village is just stirring, a pig snorts, someone coughs, a crow somewhere objects loudly to the whole concept of morning. You wonder if the Romans ever wake up like this, or if their world smells only of oil lamps and old wine and that weirdly sour cheese they're always hawking in the market. You crouch by the stream, splash your face, and catch your reflection rippling there for a second. You think you see something else, a flicker of something ancient in your eyes. A prophecy your mother muttered last winter when the fire crackled just right and the moon slid sideways through the smoke hole. Ignore it, you tell yourself, or don't. Because being Boudica means you're always a little haunted by the old gods, by the new empire, by the impossible dreams coiled in your gut. A horse wickers nearby. Yours? Probably. Already hungry and already plotting escape if you turn your back. You grin. The horses here are as stubborn as the people. And honestly, you like them that way. You swing your cloak, a battered old thing lined with wolf fur, which smells of everything except actual wolf, and fasten it at your throat with the clumsy brooch you made last year. Your fingers are quick, but your mind drifts. You remember the stories? How the Romans came with their perfect teeth and their endless sandals and their insufferable habit of putting their names on everything. How they marched their roads through sacred ground and demanded taxes no one understood. How some chieftains knelt and others just vanished. Your father, Prasutagus, tried to make peace, tried to walk the knife edge between the tribe and the empire. It worked, until it didn't. But not today. Today, you're just another pair of muddy heels in the dawn, ducking under the laundry line and dodging your youngest daughter, who is currently waging war on a chicken with a wooden spoon, if the gods are watching. They're laughing, or maybe they're bored. Even deities have to endure mornings. After all, someone calls your name, sharp and familiar, a sister, a cousin. You can't tell with the fog this thick. You shout back, voice ragged, and hear laughter answer. There's a comfort in it. Life before the storm always feels like this, ordinary, unremarkable, precious in ways you don't notice until it's gone. You duck inside for a bite of barley bread. Chew. Listen to the sound of people waking up, animals stirring, life spinning on. In the corner, someone stirs the fire, feeds it a sliver of resin for luck, a pop, a hiss, a tiny spark. You can almost taste the hope in the smoke. If you close your eyes and breathe deep, soon, you'll be called to council. Soon, the drums will start, and the questions, and the choices that make your stomach twist. but right now. You have mud on your feet and frost in your hair, and you're alive for a moment. You linger in the doorway, the day stretching before you like a path you half remember, half dread. The world is still, holding its breath. Hush, just breathe. You run your fingers along the edge of your old cloak, feeling the patchwork story of winter's past, stitched into every lump and seam. There's a hole near the hem, a souvenir from the year the goats rebelled, and somewhere up by the shoulder, a faded smear of woad from a festival you barely remember. Except that everyone sang far too loud and someone fell in the duck pond. But most of all, what you notice tonight is the smell musky, sharp, half wild, half motherly, like something that's never quite washed the forest out of its soul. The wolf fur is coarse, not soft, and you like it that way. It tells the world you don't care for the soft life, and if the gods ever drop you in the woods at midnight, at least you'll have something to argue with the ghosts about. You press the fur to your face, catch the memory of bonfire smoke, rain-soaked thyme, and just a whisper of your youngest daughter's hands, sticky with honey, when she tried to help clean it last spring. That didn't go well for anyone, especially the cloak. Outside, the world is busy forgetting that queens exist. You're just another shadow by the hearth, hunched over a wooden cup of sour ale, as the old women gossip in voices like worn river stones. They never say your naming is dangerous business here, best left for spirits and unlucky children, but you catch the sideways glances. The way someone smooths their skirt a little too carefully as you pass. You tighten your cloak. It's armor and comfort both. It's the thing you wore at your wedding feast, the one you'll be buried in. If the Romans ever leave enough of you to wrap up, every chieftain's wife in Iceni country has something like this, a bit of pelt, a patch of sheep, a memory they can clutch when the wind howls too hard, or the world gets too loud. Sometimes you think the cloak holds you together, all your worries stitched and hidden inside. You step into the outer night, soft as a thief, boots barely whispering over cold ground. Your husband, Prasutagus, careful, proud, perpetually tired of Roman paperwork, stands by the fire, poking at embers, wearing that face that means, I'm thinking important thoughts. Don't ask me about dinner. You want to laugh, but you just nudge his hip instead, and he grunts. But you see the ghost of a smile. This is what passes for intimacy when your life is part politics, part prophecy, and part ducking out of the way of flying pottery. The sheep bleed out back, somewhere. A fox shrieks. It's not even properly dark yet, but the world is closing in, and every sound is sharp enough to flinch. You lean into the wind, grateful for the cloak's warmth, and wonder if the Romans ever get cold. Do they huddle in their stone forts and pray to their wolf mother Lupa? Or do they just shiver and curse in Latin and hope no one notices you'd pay real silver to watch a legionary try to cross a fen in January? They'd probably drown in their own sandals. Someone calls from the threshold, a messenger, a cousin, a worry wrapped in a cloak. You sigh, brace yourself, and wave them in. News travels fast here, bad news. Faster. You listen as he rattles off something about a Roman envoy, a demand for tribute, a list of rules written by men with too much ink and too little sense. Prasutagus mutters under his breath, a litany of half prayers and half insults. And you nod, because that's all you can do sometimes. After he leaves, you sit, the fire crackles, the cloak, heavy on your shoulders. Feels like a memory of safety that's always half a second from slipping off. You remember the old stories of wolf spirits who guarded the tribe, who ran through dreams and watched over lost children. You used to believe them. Sometimes you still do, especially when the world is quiet and your bones ache in that way that means something is about to break. The children sneak in, yours, and not yours. Because in a village this small, everyone's blood is mixed together sooner or later. They crawl under your cloak, giggling, sticky and smelling of marsh and ash. You try to scold them, but end up laughing instead. The sound slipping out like honey unexpected. Messy, and a little too loud for someone who's supposed to be a queen. But you don't care. Let the gods judge you. Let the Romans write it down. Boudica, soft on children, hard on invaders, moderate on chores. Someone sets a bowl of stew by your side. You eat, grateful. Not because it's good, it's not. It's mostly roots and old dreams. but because sharing food is a spell, a way of keeping the darkness out for one more night. You watch the shadows crawl across the ceiling, listen to your husband and the elders argue quietly, the words weaving in and out of your thoughts like winter moths. You wonder, will this cloak be enough to keep you safe when the real storm breaks, when the legions come, and the coins clatter, and the laws change faster than you can count? Or will it just be another relic, a patch of fur for some future girl to find and wonder about? Maybe, but for tonight, it is enough. The air grows thick with sleepiness, with secrets, with the hush that comes before every storm. You pull the cloak tighter, settle the children, and look out the door toward the future, toward the Romans, toward everything that's coming. The wolf fur warms your shoulders, and you pretend you're not afraid. A hush, and breathe. The thing nobody tells you about being royal, especially the local. Mud under the nails. Fenland version is that most days. You don't feel like a queen, not even a little. You feel like a glorified sheepdog with slightly fancier braids. Someone who knows exactly which neighbor's pig keeps eating the cabbages, and precisely how many relatives you have to invite to the next moon feast to avoid starting a blood feud. You're the one people ask when the beer goes sour, or a ghost gets too friendly in the granary. And, oh yes, you're also expected to be the answer to the small problem of Rome. You didn't grow up dreaming of a diadem or golden bracelets or Roman-style palaces. Let's be real. Nobody in Iceni country has time to dream about jewelry when there's mud to shovel, kids to chase, and rumors to manage. The only crown you ever wore as a girl was made of hawthorn and wild daisies, and even that was snatched by your sister before sunset. Your earliest memories are all noise, the sharp slap of reeds on bare legs, the taste of cold water drawn up from a well before sunrise, your mother's laughter unexpected and rough-edged when you fell in the nettles and emerged red-faced and swearing like a sailor. But now you stand at the front of the hall, your husband beside you, half the village watching with the kind of hunger that's not about food. They want to see if you'll flinch. You don't. You adjust your cloak, smooth your hair, and give them the look that says, I can outstare a hawk and outlast a fenwinter. Which, to be honest, you've done twice already. The Romans have sent another official this one with a nose like a heron and a toga that probably costs more than your entire herd. He bows too low, then too quick, like he's afraid you'll bite. Maybe you will. If he asks again about the tribute, the translator a local girl with more earrings than sense whispers in your ear. But you're already 3 steps ahead, rehearsing all the polite ways to say. You can take your new tax and bury it in the bog. There's a silence as thick as oat porridge. Every cough, every squeak of a stool, every wheezy sigh from the fire is another reminder that this moment is a performance. And the audience is both your people and the shadows lurking outside Roman, Saxon, ghost, or otherwise. You say your lines measured, careful, delivered with a tongue as sharp as your grandmother's best bone needle. The Roman, to his credit, doesn't faint. He just blinks, makes a note on his wax tablet, and quietly regrets his career choices. You wonder if the other queens in history felt this awkward. Did Cleopatra ever have to explain why her people kept painting rude gestures on the tax collector's door? Did Cardamondua up north, the proper queen, ever find wild garlic stuffed in her sandals before a negotiation? You bet she did. History is full of women who didn't sign up for this, but showed up anyway, later, when the envoy is gone. Everyone wants your opinion. They want strategy, prophecy, reassurance. You give them a little of each, careful not to promise too much. You know better than to say, don't worry, Rome will go away if we're polite. Rome doesn't do go away. Rome does grind you into the earth and name a new town after itself. Still, you give hope. Sometimes that's the job. Be the stone in the river, the one thing everyone can lean on, even when the water's rising, at dusk. You find yourself alone with the old priestess, the one who smells of tallow and wild mint, who claims to remember when the Fenlands were nothing but sky and secrets. She eyes you over the rim of her cup and mutters, you know, girl. Power is like a fire, warm when you're near it, dangerous if you fall in. She cackles, and you can't help but laugh, because what else can you do? You both know the truth this reign of yours wasn't meant to be. Prasutagus is the one who makes the deals, signs the treaties, shakes the Roman hands. You're supposed to be the queen who tends the home fires, tells the stories, keeps the peace. But life has other plans. The old king is coughing more. The Romans are getting nosier. Your daughters watch you with wide, serious eyes, already sensing that the rules are shifting, that the world they inherit may not have space for wildflowers and hawthorn crowns. You find yourself rehearsing speeches in your head, words you hope you never have to say, promises you're afraid you might have to keep. Night falls hard in Iceni country, thick and wet as a blanket of moss. You step outside, look up at a moon so pale it could almost be a promise, and breathe in the scent of wood smoke and wet earth. Your wolf cloak is heavy on your shoulders, your hair loose and tangled, your heart beating that slow, careful rhythm of someone who knows that tomorrow is always hungrier than today. Somewhere in the darkness, a fox barks, someone's child laughs in their sleep. You stand in the middle of it all, queen, mother, woman, question mark. The world expects you to choose be gentle or be strong, be shadow or be flame. But you know better. Sometimes, you have to be both. You turn back toward the hall, where the fire still burns and the gossip is just getting started. For a second, you allow yourself the tiniest smile, thinking of all the queens who came before, all the girls who braided wildflowers into their hair and ended up holding history by the throat. Maybe you weren't meant to reign, but here you are, anyway. A hush, and breathe, and you hear the sound of Roman boots crunching on gravel long before you see the glint of a helmet, and the chickens scatter like they know exactly what's coming next. You wake with the sun crawling through the slats in your roof, a damp golden haze lighting up all the imperfections in your world, the frayed edges of your cloak, the muddy prints tracked in by whoever left their shoes by the fire, the family dog curled under your bench, snoring like it has no concept of imperial politics. Your daughters are already arguing over the best way to braid hair for a festival. Their voice is a mix of singing and bickering that would make even the Roman gods envy your household drama. Today feels ordinary, but in the way a cloudless sky feels right before a summer thunderstorm, still. Sharp-edged, humming with a kind of energy you'd rather ignore. You've heard the news. Of course everyone has. Rome is coming. Not the friendly drop-in for tea kind of coming. The marching, shouting, measuring your land, with sticks and judgment kind. You tell yourself you're ready, but you tie your belt a little tighter and make sure the silver torque at your neck is as polished as the day you got it. Pride is a shield, and today you're going to need it. Breakfast is the usual coarse bread. Cheese, honey, a jug of ale you pretend you don't see your daughter sneaking sips from. You let it slide, if there was ever a day to fortify yourself. It's this one, outside. The village is stirring, neighbors exchanging news with the kind of nervousness usually reserved for eclipses or wild boars on the loose. Someone's already burned the porridge. Someone else is predicting disaster in the entrails of a fish. You roll your eyes, but make a mental note not to eat fish for lunch. Then comes the knock, not the gentle knock of a friend, not the urgent thud of bad news, but the slow, deliberate thump of someone who expects to be obeyed. The chickens scatter, the dogs bark. The Romans have arrived. You step outside, trying to look every inch the queen, though you're acutely aware there's a bit of straw stuck in your hair and your sandals don't match. The Roman official is exactly as you'd feared, tall, smug, sporting more gold than sense, and flanked by two soldiers who look like they've never smiled in their lives. He introduces himself in the worst attempt at your language you've ever heard, mispronouncing your name so badly you wonder if he's talking to the dog. You smile, the way you would at a toddler with a sharp stick, polite, but ready to duck. He has a scroll. Of course he has a scroll. Romans always have scrolls. You wonder if they even go to the latrine without a scroll. He reads. You listen, or pretend to your mind drifting to the sheep that need shearing and the ale barrel you should have hidden better. He wants tribute, taxes. Maybe you're firstborn if you don't read the fine print. There's a new law, a new tax, a new list of things Rome wants, and a new set of punishments if you don't comply. You nod, you argue, you and ah in all the right places. You know the game. You've played it before. The trick is to agree just enough to keep him off balance, but not so much you look weak. He's used to dealing with frightened men and flustered elders. He doesn't know what to do with a queen who can gut a fish, milk a cow, and negotiate a treaty all before the sun hits noon. The villagers gather, pretending to be busy stacking wood or feeding pigs. But you know they're listening. The Romans' words echo in the still air, promises of protection and order that sound suspiciously like threats. You meet his gaze. Let him see you're not impressed by his armor or his titles. You've seen worse. You've survived harder winters than he could imagine. There's a moment, a heartbeat, when the mask slips, and you see the uncertainty in his eyes, for all their talk of civilization. The Romans are uneasy here. The bogs, the mists, the way the land seems to swallow sound and secret both. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost after the official speech. There are gifts to be exchanged. You present him with a traditional welcome bread, salt, a cup of honeyed ale. He sniffs it, as if expecting poison. And you resist the urge to tell him it's the strongest thing he'll drink all year. He hands you a token from Rome, a silver coin stamped with the emperor's face. You study it for a moment, wondering if it's supposed to impress you. The face looks nothing like the last emperor's. You suspect they just reused the same stamp and hope nobody notices. By midday, the Romans are making their rounds, inspecting, asking questions, writing everything down. The children scatter, some curious, some wary. Your husband tries to mediate, his voice careful and diplomatic. But you can see the tension in his shoulders. Rome calls it governance. You call it being sized up by a wolf in a sheep pen when they finally leave. The village exhales a slow, nervous sigh that ripples from one cottage to the next. You gather your people in the great hall, voices low, heads close together, plans are made, oaths are whispered, and more than one mug of ale is drained in the name of solidarity. You lay it out, simply Rome takes what it wants. But the Iceni have survived worse. You remind them of old victories, old cleverness, old gods who still walk these lands in the fog and the firelight. Someone cracks a joke about hiding the ale next time everyone laughs. The sound brittle but real. You look at your daughters, at your people, at the coin in your hand. You don't know what comes next, but you know this Rome can knock all it wants, but it will never own your story. The sun sets, the fire burns low, and in the shadows of your hall, you sense a shift like thunder rolling far off, promising change, a hush, and breathe. You smell the sharp tang of ink, old leather, and Roman sweat as a new official unrolls his tax scroll across your table, right on top of the bread. Let's be honest, there's nothing quite like the feeling of seeing a Roman tax collector roll into your village, flanked by soldiers and bureaucrats who carry themselves like they're one toga adjustment away from declaring your field their personal garden. You try to remember the old days, when visitors brought news, or at least a decent story. Not ledgers and a list of fines for letting your goats wander onto imperial grass. But here they are. And there you are. And the dogs are already hiding under the bench because even they know the scent of paperwork spells trouble. You take a deep breath well, as deep as you can manage, considering the air's thick with the smell of peat smoke, sheep dung, and your neighbor's favorite garlic and turnip stew. There's a moment, just before the door opens, when you imagine what would happen if you just didn't answer. You could hide in the root cellar, pretend you've suddenly taken up the life of a potato, or better yet, sneak out the back and spend the morning among the wildflowers. But you don't. You're Boudica. You've got a village to protect, a reputation to uphold. And let's be real, a deeply held suspicion that if you left your daughters in charge for 5 minutes, you'd return to find the chickens braided into someone's hair. So you face them. The tax collector's got the look of a man who considers himself the undisputed king of sums and fines. And his scribe, a weedy fellow with ink-stained fingers and a nervous twitch, is already unpacking his parchment like he's about to write the next great tragedy of the Roman world. The soldiers, bless them, are at least pretending to admire your thatched roof while secretly calculating how many Iceni could fit in the nearest prison cell. The formalities begin. The tax collector announces himself in Latin, which sounds suspiciously like he's gargling marbles, then switches to your language with the grace of a man who's only ever learned curses and numbers. "Good morning," he says, but it comes out closer to goat morning. You keep your face neutral, even as your eldest daughter muffles a snort behind her hand. They spread their scrolls across your table, nudging aside the morning loaf like it's just another inconvenience in the path of Roman progress. You notice they brought their own quills, probably because last time someone accidentally swapped theirs for a chicken feather. The tax collector starts listing demands: grain, livestock, wool, coins. You nod. You ask polite questions. You point out that the last census counted your sheep twice, once as sheep, once as local entertainment. He doesn't laugh. Romans, as a rule, don't appreciate livestock-based humor. Then come the extra taxes. Did you know there's a new levy on wells and a fee for using the sun between the hours of dawn and dusk? Oh, and apparently there's a penalty for anyone whose house faces east with insufficient decorative urns. You almost admire their creativity. If only they'd used it for something useful, like inventing a way to keep mud out of your sandals. Your husband sits beside you, trying to negotiate, but his diplomatic approach is met with the same stubbornness you'd expect from a rock in a rainstorm, the collector explains, with the air of a man bestowing great wisdom upon mere mortals, that all of this is for your own good. Roman order, he says, as if those two words are supposed to be comforting. You smile, the way you'd smile at a snake in the garden, polite, wary, with just a hint of try anything, and I'll introduce you to my shovel. All the while, the village watches through the open door. You catch sight of old Fergus, the unofficial expert on every event that's ever happened, leaning in as if he can absorb Roman secrets through sheer proximity. The children are peeking through cracks in the wall, eyes wide, already plotting how to reenact this scene later, with wooden swords and their least favorite cousin as the tax man. After an hour of back and forth, the collector presents the final tally, a sum so large you half expect him to throw in a complimentary chariot ride to Rome just for fun. You haggle, you reason, you remind him, as sweetly as possible, that the Iceni have a long history of accidentally misplacing inconvenient documents. He remains unmoved, clearly trained in the art of out-stubborning British queens. Eventually, you agree to his terms, or at least pretend to. You know how this works. You pay what you must, hide what you can, and hope that next season's harvest is bountiful enough to cover both taxes and the inevitable missing sheep fees. The collector packs up his scrolls, assures you that Rome appreciates your cooperation, and leaves with the air of a man who believes he's done a hard day's work. The soldiers follow, one of them pausing to wink at your eldest. She rolls her eyes, unimpressed. You mentally add keeping daughters away from bored legionaries to your to-do list. Once they're gone, the village comes alive again, as if a spell has lifted. Neighbors gather, voices rising with the relief of those who've weathered yet another Roman storm. You share a jug of ale, break bread with the old women who remember a time before Rome, and listen as the children retell the tax collector's demands with wild exaggerations. Someone jokes about building a statue to the patron god of taxes, maybe a pig with a coin in its mouth, or a chicken with a scroll for a tail. Laughter bounces off the walls, and for a moment, you remember what it feels like to be part of something older and deeper than any empire. You look around at your people at the hands worn from work, the faces marked by weather and laughter and loss, and, no matter what Rome throws at you, you're not alone, not now, not ever. Outside, the sky stretches wide and wild, and the breeze carries the promise of rain, or maybe rebellion. A hush, and breathe. You taste honeyed mead and roasted venison, and somewhere beneath the laughter, you catch the tang of secrets carried on the smoke. The sun's barely dipped behind the hedgerows, but the feast is already alive, the kind of noisy, bustling energy that builds up in a village whenever someone's managed to trap a wild boar and nobody is currently at war with the neighbors. Picture it, rough wooden tables hauled into the center of the longhouse, the thatched roof dark above, and a dozen braziers burning away the chill. The air's a stew of wood smoke, roast meat, fresh bread, and the earthy undertone of unwashed feet. Look, you're a queen, not a miracle worker. Tonight is a good night, the sort you wish you could bottle and save for a rainy Tuesday in March. You sit not at the head of the table, but in the thick of your people Iceni style, where a queen is only as strong as the hand that grips hers under the table and the voices that rise beside her in song. Your youngest daughter has already accidentally dumped a bowl of stew in her sister's lap. Nobody blames her. The bowls are slippery, the stew's a bit thin, and let's face it, Tomorrow's chores go to whoever yelps loudest tonight. Let's be clear. These aren't Roman banquets with reclining sofas, snooty waiters, and poetry readings that last until someone politely drops dead. Iceni parties are noisy, practical, and always a little competitive. There's more singing than sitting, more dancing than decorum, and the only dress code is try not to trip over your own cloak. If you do, make it look like a new dance move, and someone will probably join in. There's a lot of food, sure, but also a lot of watching, because in the flicker of the firelight, alliances form and dissolve quicker than a cup of warm mead. You notice who sits beside whom, who's whispering, who's pretending not to stare at the visiting trader's daughter with the dangerous grin. You're queen after all, but you're also mother, neighbor, chief gossip collector, and unofficially referee in at least 3 different feuds. Your friend and advisor? Old Sinan, he's the one who always smells like peat and has a beard that could house a small family of sparrows, leans over with a grin. If you ever need someone to eat an extra helping of boar, he says, I volunteer in the name of peace. You roll your eyes, but pass him the platter anyway. The peace, such as it is, often comes down to keeping bellies full and tempers mellow. There's a joke about warriors being braver after their 3rd horn of mead, but it's hard to tell if it's a joke or just proven local science. At these banquets, stories are currency. Someone brings up that time your cousin tried to impress the Druids by wrestling a sheep, the sheep won. Another boasts of the day he outran a Roman patrol, swears he could have kept going if he hadn't tripped over his own sword. Laughter bursts like thunder, and you feel it this wild, collective heartbeat pulsing through the floor and out into the night. But here's where it gets interesting under all the noise. Real business is being done. Deals are struck with a slap on the back. Promises are exchanged in low voices by the smoke hole. A glance across the table can mean anything: a warning, an invitation, an apology for yesterday's goat-related misunderstanding. You learn to read these signals early. Every queen does. If someone lifts their cup and nods at you 3 times, that's not just cheers. It's the old sign for, I'll meet you behind the grain store at dawn. If 2 farmers swap belts in front of everyone, that means a land deal's gone through. And if your eldest daughter starts passing out honey cakes, it means she's plotting something. Again, the feast goes on, the musicians, if you can call 3 fiddlers, a bone flute, and someone whistling through a comb. Musicians strike up a tune. Soon, the benches are pushed aside, and everyone's stamping, twirling, and making a joyful racket. You join in, because queens who don't dance are either very ill or plotting a rebellion. You're not ill, and you prefer your rebellions out in the open. Outside, the air is crisp and the stars are tangled in the branches overhead. Sometimes you slip out for a moment, letting the noise recede, feeling the coolness settle on your skin. You listen to the distant owl, to the half-drunken singing, to the secrets that always seem louder at night. These are your people: loud, stubborn, brilliant, ridiculous. Family by blood, or marriage, or just by surviving together through another hungry winter. You return to the fire, where a circle has formed for stories, the real stories now, the ones that matter. Someone asks you for the tale of your mother's victory over the rival tribe. It involved a bear, 3 confused Romans, and an axe that's still hanging over the hearth. You oblige, spinning the words out slow and strong, letting the silences linger just long enough to build suspense. Even the children are quiet now, wide-eyed, dreaming of the day they'll have their own stories to tell. As the night wears on, the rules loosen, the bold get bolder. The shy find their courage in the dregs of the mead. Some sneak off for stolen kisses, others for whispered deals. In the corner, the elders debate politics with the serious intensity of men who know nothing will change unless the women agree. At last, when the flames have burned low and the laughter has dwindled to a tired hum, you take a quiet moment. You look around at the faces, some flushed with drink, some thoughtful, some just grateful for another full belly. There's pride here, and hope, and an unspoken promise whatever comes. You'll face it together. The world outside the fire's circle is dangerous, uncertain, and sometimes cold. But here, for a little while, you are safe, fed, and seen. A hush, and breathe. You wake to cockerels squabbling, your mind already counting the possible disasters on the horizon. the cool, damp earth beneath your feet, reminding you a queen never truly sleeps with both eyes shut. The first thing you notice is the chill, sneaking in beneath the hide blankets, curling its way up your ankles like a Roman tax collector sniffing for unreported goats. There's that tiny moment where you could pretend you're not Boudica, that you're just some anonymous farm girl, and that the loud snoring beside you is not your youngest daughter sprawled like a conquered province. One hand tangled in your hair, the other clutching last night's bread roll as if it might be stolen in her sleep. But you are Boudica, so you sigh and sit up. The day starts now, and it waits for no queen. If you listen, really listen, you'll hear the whole village coming awake, the creak of wagon wheels as someone's off to fetch water, the soft thud of hooves as your best friend's sons chase runaway sheep across a dewy field again, the distant, echoing laughter of girls weaving garlands while already exchanging gossip faster than news travels down a Roman road. You stretch, feeling the stiffness in your back, warrior queens, as it turns out, aren't issued ergonomic mattresses and blink at the gentle glow of dawn sliding through the cracks in the wattle walls. Someone, probably your eldest, has already stoked the hearth, and the air smells of smoke, honey, and the faintest tang of yesterday's feast. A good queen knows her priorities check on the livestock, make sure nobody set the barn on fire, and see whether anyone has snuck away to trade stories or worse, news with the neighboring tribe. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders, fasten it with a brooch carved with the spirals of your ancestors, and step outside. The world is wet, green, and a little bit wild. Iceni land always feels like it's teetering between two worlds, the one you can touch, mud, grass, the crisp bite of river air, and the one just out of sight, where spirits, omens, and the ghosts of ancestors lurk behind every ancient oak. Some mornings, you wish the Romans would wander into that shadow world and never return. But no such luck. Breakfast is a communal affair, which is to say whoever's awake eats whatever's left from last night. And the fastest hands get the best crusts. You trade a smile with the oldest woman in the tribe, who claims she remembers the last time the Iceni faced a famine, and, conveniently, also remembers every single person who tried to hoard dried apples. She eyes your daughters. You wink back. Queens and grandmothers, nature's most dangerous alliance. There's business to attend to. Every dawn brings a new disaster in waiting, and the Roman Empire rarely sends invitations before invading your peace of mind. First, a nervous messenger barely out of boyhood. All knees and uncertainty arrives with rumors. The Romans, it's whispered, are building a new road near the border, which means new taxes, new soldiers, and a fresh batch of Latin-speaking merchants who think boiled cabbage is haute cuisine. You nod, pretending you didn't already know. A queen always knows. Next, it's time to inspect the warriors. You walk the practice grounds, nodding at girls who train with spears twice their height and boys who'd rather flirt than fight. Good luck with that, you mutter, eyeing the youngest with her accidental braids. You praise, you scold, you joke with the best of them, but you're always watching who is slacking, who is hungry, who is haunted by nightmares of the red-crested invaders on the horizon. The real trick to survival isn't in swordplay. It's in spotting the shift in the wind, the way old men suddenly go silent when you mention Rome, the tiny frown on your sister's face when a neighbor offers her an extra cup of ale. You collect these details, tuck them away, let them swirl behind your eyes like storm clouds gathering. And then there are the druids. They arrive, mysterious and slightly mossy, as if summoned by the crows. Omens are strong today, one says, holding up a handful of damp oak leaves. Yes, you reply. They're strong every time my daughters skip their chores. They smile, inscrutable as always, and offer advice. Trust in the old gods. Avoid Roman wine. Don't let the chickens near the sacred spring again. You accept their wisdom, because a wise queen listens, but you also make a mental note to hide the last jar of imported olives. The druids have suspiciously expensive tastes for men who claim to shun worldly pleasures. The morning winds on, a braid of chores and choices. You meet with the elders in the great roundhouse, smoke curling up, voices rising and falling in that rhythm older than history. You discuss everything from boundary stones to the best way to outwit Roman census takers. Send them in circles around the village pond, suggests Sinan. To general approval, You set plans, assign tasks, deliver warnings in the gentlest possible way. You're queen, but you're also friend, daughter, mother. Your authority a patchwork cloak held together by stubbornness and shared laughter. Some mornings, you allow yourself a moment by the river, water sliding cold and bright around your ankles, the world silent except for the bubbling current and the heartbeat in your chest. You remember your mother's lessons: trust your instincts, sharpen your blade, and never, ever turn your back on the Romans. You smile, though, because you know what she meant was never forget where you came from, or the people who stand with you now. By midday, the sun is high, and the world is busy, but you keep one eye on the shadows, one hand always close to your knife, and your mind restless, clever, never still tracking every movement, every change, every chance for the Iceni to thrive, to fight, to remain fiercely, stubbornly themselves. A hush, and breathe. You know how some mornings have a taste, almost metallic, like the air's been sharpened overnight by 1,000 whispers. That's the day you wake to a day that seems ordinary if you're only counting the sheep or minding the grumbling pigs. But not if you're the sort of queen whose dreams get tangled with omens. Out on the edge of the village, the mist hangs low, skimming over ditches and curling around the ankles of the first women fetching water. Your own hair is damp when you step into the chill, feeling the hush. That pause before something the old stories love so much. There's a rhythm to the dawn, the sparrows quarrel in the hedge, the whine of a far-off cartwheel, the familiar, earthy stench of life in a place where everyone knows everyone and what they had for breakfast. 2. You're almost lulled by it. Almost, but your gaze keeps snagging on little oddities, a fox skulking too near the houses, the way the dogs refuse to leave their straw beds, the sudden hush in the village square when your shadow falls across the door. Today, the air feels crowded, your mind, always a restless bird, circles the edges of unease. You remember the tales your mother used to tell, back when you were still a girl, learning how to read the clouds for rain and the river for fish. If the crows are too many, she'd warn. Don't look for harvest, look for war. You glance up, the crows, of course, are everywhere. Word arrives early, delivered on muddy boots by a cousin's son who nearly runs straight into your arms. Breathless, eyes wide, he's seen Roman patrols riding the old trade route again. And this time, they're not just counting sheep, they're building a post. Queen, he gasps. They brought their own stones and hammers. They're singing as they work. You thank him. Hand on his shoulder, feeling his heart pounding like a drum beneath his tunic. Of course, you knew this was coming. The Romans' masters of helpful infrastructure never met a road, a temple, or a village they didn't want to improve. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the grinding of empire, the way stone meets earth, the way old boundaries get erased by the march of sandals and the clatter of foreign tools. The news travels through your village like a shiver, rattling the nerves of old men and sharpening the tongues of gossiping aunties. One of them insists she saw a weasel running backward at dawn. Another claims the hearth smoked blue last night, never a good sign. You gather the elders for counsel, their faces creased as winter bark, their voices softer than the soughing wind. They trade omens like children trade riddles, a lamb born with 2 heads, the north wind blowing out the south. 3 days running, the old druid listens to it all with a half smile, his beard tangled with bits of leaf and a crow feather for luck. He clears his throat and tells the room, in that grave I have seen this before tone, that the gods are uneasy. You notice his hands trembling just a little as he says it. You try not to show your worry, but everyone can read a queen's face like they read the morning sky hoping for sun. Bracing for thunder, the children, of course, are oblivious, chasing one another around the fire pit, inventing games where the Romans always lose. You envy their certainty, their faith that stories always end with the tribe intact and the queen triumphant. But you know better. You've seen enough winters to know that sometimes the sky splits, and not even the bravest hearts can stitch it whole again. The omens grow thicker as the day wears on. A hare dashes between your feet in the market, nearly toppling your basket of cheese. The women squeal, but you only laugh out loud, for their sake, because what else do you do with fear? Except dress it up as humor and hope it finds another home. You catch the eye of your eldest daughter, who looks at you with that mix of suspicion and love unique to teenagers. She's learning, fast. That queenship is a performance, steady hands, bright eyes, voice clear as a bell, even when the message is bad news wrapped in honey. By afternoon, a rider from the neighboring tribe arrives, mud-spattered and wild-eyed. The Trinavantes have had their lands seized, he says. The Romans have declared a new law: debts are owed, and everything livestock, grain, even daughters can be taken to pay. He spits on the ground, curses in a language older than Rome itself, and wipes his nose on his sleeve. The room erupts in outrage, fear, a kind of frantic calculation. You let them rage, you listen. You feel the storm building behind your ribs. At sunset, you slip away from the noise, weaving between the roundhouses and out into the fields. The wind has changed, whipping your hair into your face, carrying the tang of smoke from distant campfires and the sharp, medicinal smell of crushed nettle. You walk, alone, because sometimes a queen has to meet her fears without witnesses. The sky is streaked with red shepherd's warning. As the saying goes, you think of all the times you've comforted children by promising that the dawn would bring peace. You wish, for just a moment, someone would promise you the same. Back in the village, fires burn low, the shadows are long, and even the bravest warriors seem to shrink in the uncertain glow. You gather your daughters to your side, braid their hair with trembling fingers, and tell them a story, a tale of the old days, when the Iceni chased away monsters with nothing but a stick and a shout. They giggle, press their faces into your side, pretend not to notice how tightly you're holding them. Before sleep, you kneel at the family altar, fingers tracing the carved spiral patterns, lips murmuring prayers as old as the stones. You ask the gods for courage, for wisdom, for one more day of laughter before the world turns upside down. The wind moans through the thatch, and somewhere a fox barks, sharp and lonely. Tonight, you dream of ravens' black wings blotting out the sun, feathers falling like snow, and the sound of marching feet, relentless, echoing, near, a hush, and breathe. It starts with a single sound, a hush falling across the village like a soft cloak, the kind that both comforts and unnerves. You stand in the threshold of your roundhouse, breath caught in your chest, every sense stretched as if you were part fox, part queen. The air is thick with the promise of rain, but it's something else you're sniffing for, something older than thunder or the creak of wagon wheels in the mud. Out there, just beyond the last flicker of firelight, the world feels poised, balanced on a blade's edge. The children are already tucked in, muttering about monsters and Romans and which one is worse, jury's still out. The men are gathered around the big communal fire, arguing in voices pitched low, because even bravest warriors get small when there's real trouble in the wind. Somewhere, your eldest daughter is singing to herself, a tuneless, repetitive comfort for the both of you. She's clever, that one. You hope you live long enough to see her outsmart the world. Tonight, though, you can't pretend. The omens have settled like a flock of crows around your feet. All week, you've seen more than your share, 3 black dogs circling the well at dusk, a red moon, that weird, persistent ache in your left knee your grandmother always claimed she could predict disaster by joint pain, and you never quite believed her until now. Then there's the message from the Trinavantes, the neighbors who used to be mostly rivals, sometimes friends, and now, by the magic of Roman bureaucracy, fellow victims. You think about that debt edict again, rolling it over like a sour pebble under your tongue. The Romans say you owe them, as if conquest comes with an invoice and the goddess of justice carries an abacus. Your people mutter in corners, sharp and frightened. They're not built for endless patience, nor are you. The Romans don't realize Iceni's stubbornness is as famous as their horses. And you, Queen Boudica, are beginning to wonder if the gods sent all these signs for a reason. You step outside, feeling the dew soak into your bare feet, cool as river stones. You like to walk the perimeter of the village at night, pretending you're checking on the sheep or the watchfires, but really, you're searching for some scrap of calm. You find it in the quiet moments, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of a hedgehog in the bracken, the faint scent of elderflower drifting from the shadows. You remember your mother's words, listen to the night, It knows what comes before you do. You do listen, tonight especially, because every sense is a taut string, waiting to snap or sing. In the darkness, your mind drifts to memories the first time you wore the torque of leadership, heavy as a promise, the day your daughters were born, wailing like tiny queens in their own right, the way your husband once laughed at the idea that Rome could ever swallow Britain. But Rome is swallowing everything now, and laughter is in short supply. At the edge of the village, you find the council fire burning low, embers pulsing in the dark like the heart of an old beast. The elders are there, faces craggy and serious, voices weaving in and out of the smoke. They argue about old laws and new punishments, about what happens when tradition collides with empire. You watch them, arms folded, letting their words flow over you, 1 part comfort, 2 parts chaos. Suddenly, you realize you're tired of waiting for omens to become commands. The gods may speak in riddles, but your patience has a deadline. You clear your throat just once, but it's enough to snap every neck in your direction. They hush, blinking at you in the dim light. You step forward, standing where the glow paints your face with gold and shadow. I've listened, you say, to the wind, to the birds, to every whisper in the night. I've seen the signs, so have you. But what good are omens if we do nothing? Your voice isn't loud, but it carries a gift, or maybe a curse, of queenship. The council stirs, unsure whether to argue or agree. You lay it out, clear and unadorned the debts, the stolen lands, the insult to your daughters, the suffocating weight of Roman civilization that tastes more like ash than honey. You talk of neighbors pressed into poverty, proud warriors forced to bow to foreign laws, your own kin humiliated by governors who can't even pronounce your tribe's name right. There's a ripple in the crowd, a flicker of rage, the kind that glows in the belly and makes hands curl into fists. Someone a druid, or maybe just the loudest uncle asks, "And what will you do?" Queen. You smile, a tight, bright line, and answer with the honesty of someone who has nothing left to lose. "We will answer," you say, "not with omens, but with deeds." The Romans want to see what it means to provoke the Iceni. Let them, you don't call it a rebellion, not yet. That word is too sharp, too dangerous, too Roman. But you see the way your people straighten, shoulders unbowing, eyes hardening with a courage that's half desperation, half hope. You let the silence hang, thick as fog, until you feel them, really feel them turning toward you, ready to believe in something again. You spend the rest of the night weaving plans instead of dreams. The warriors slip away to sharpen swords, to whisper in the dark about ancient alliances and new tricks. The elders huddle close, muttering names of friendly tribes and old debts that might finally be repaid in blood. You keep your daughters close, kissing their hair, hoping that tomorrow you'll have the right words to keep them safe or at least brave. Before dawn, you offer a prayer to every god you can think of, and a few you invent on the spot. You ask for luck, for justice, for the kind of fire that can burn away fear. You rise, dust the ashes from your knees, and step out into the new morning. There is no more waiting, a hush, and breathe. It's not the rooster that wakes you, not this morning, no, today. It's the sound of drums alow, rolling thunder that feels like it's coming up from the earth itself, shaking the dust out of the thatched roofs and rattling the bones of anyone still pretending this is just another ordinary sunrise. You sit up, blanket tangled around your legs, heart already outpacing the rhythm. You half expect to see a Roman cavalry patrol in your doorway, but instead, it's just your youngest, wide-eyed and clutching her favorite wooden doll, whispering, "Mama, what's that noise?" You listen, really listen, and realize it's not just one drum, not just the desperate hope of your own village. It's the Trinovantes to the east, answering your midnight promises, the Coritani, far to the north, sending their own reply. Even the Cadovellani, those professional grudge holders, famous for arguing over where the sheep should graze, have sent someone to beat a warning against the wet skins stretched over hollowed logs. This is what it sounds like when a country that's been picked apart finally decides it's tired of being the meal. You dress quickly, tossing on a cloak that still smells of last week's smoke and lavender, snatching a handful of bread from the hearth and winking at your daughters, who are pretending not to be scared, if you're lucky. They'll remember this as the morning their mother looked like she was born to shout at history. If not, Well, they can always blame the Romans in therapy. You step out into the village square, squinting at the dawn, already. People are gathering, some still in nightshirts, some with swords belted awkwardly over farm clothes. One or two still brushing straw from their hair and muttering about prophecies and should have milked the goats first. You spot the council elders, grave and dignified as ever. Except now, they look like they're quietly fighting the urge to jump up and down. The drums keep going, growing louder, bolder. There's a call and response rhythm, as if every beat is a question and answer. Are we really doing this? Yes. Are we alone? No. Is anyone else hungry? Always. A runner arrives, gasping for air, and for once too winded to give a proper greeting. He hands you a message, no parchment or Roman wax seal here. Just a knotted leather thong and a sprig of yew. Old code, older than the empire, it means. We are with you. You can almost hear your ancestors cackling somewhere in the mist. Proud that their favorite war song has made a comeback. You call for your war leaders and your druids, your fiercest hunters and your cleverest gossips. Because rebellion in Britannia requires both swords and the sort of rumors that could make Caesar himself blush. The strategy meeting is held beneath the sacred oak, a tree so old it's probably seen more secrets than half the empire's senators combined. You lay out the plan, such as it is: strike the Roman settlements, hit them where it hurts, show them what happens when they forget whose island this is. There's a moment, a trembling hush, when everyone is waiting to see if someone will back down. If someone will suggest more talking or more tribute, or maybe just hiding in a nice cave until the legions get bored and leave. But you look them in the eye one by one, across the dapple sunlight and the drifting smoke from last night's fire, and you remind them of what's been done: the whipped backs, the stolen lands, the daughters who will never again walk to the well with their heads held high. You remind them, gently, that this is not just about vengeance, though vengeance is always a tempting dessert. This is about honor, about being able to look your own children in the face and tell them that, when it mattered. You stood up, maybe shaking, maybe hungry, but standing all the same. Someone cracks a joke about Roman armor and sheep dung, and just like that, the tension breaks. There's laughter, the kind that's half terror, half bravado, the kind that makes you remember why these wild, stubborn people are yours and why. For better or worse, you are theirs. Preparations whirl into motion. Warriors sharpen their blades, some with proper whetstones, some with the edge of a flint and a curse for good luck. The women gather herbs and bandages, threading them into baskets alongside gossip and silent prayers. You see boys barely old enough for their first hunt trying to look fierce. Girls weaving blue woad into each other's hair, like they're prepping for the world's most dramatic school play. You send word to every tribe within reach, dispatching messengers on shaggy ponies and swift-footed runners with breath to spare. The message is simple. Now is the hour, if you have old debts. Settle them with Roman gold, if you have old grudges. There's no time like the present, and if you have a song to sing, let it be louder than the sound of fear. At noon, a small contingent of the Trinovantes arrives, bristling with pride and more than a few impressive mustaches. Their chieftain, eyes sharp as a hawk, greets you with a clasp of arms. We heard the drums. He says, "We thought we'd bring some noise of our own." He winks. And you can't help but laugh, even as the enormity of what you're about to do presses in on you like a second, heavier cloak by afternoon. The square is thick with people warriors from distant villages, healers with painted faces, elders humming old songs that sound like spells. The air smells of sweat, excitement, and the faint tang of roasted barley someone was too nervous to eat. Someone begins a chant, low and rhythmic, and others join in, until the village itself seems to sway on its foundations. You stand at the center, heart pounding, and raise your hand for silence. It takes a moment, but they quiet eyes on you, faces alight with hope, doubt, and something fierce and unbreakable. You speak not as a queen, but as a mother, a neighbor, a witness. You tell them the truth: this may be the end, or it may be the beginning, but it will be ours. And the Romans well. They'd better brace themselves for the kind of welcome only Britannia can deliver. As the sun dips low, the drums rise again, and this time the rhythm belongs to everyone. The first steps of a march, the first true breath before the storm. The world, you realize, will never be the same after today. A hush and breathe. There's a certain silence just before chaos, a space between heartbeats when you wonder briefly if history really can pivot on the toes of your bare feet. You feel the cool mud squelch between your toes as you stand at the edge of Camulodunum, the old Trinovantian holy city turned Roman playground. And you wonder if the gods are listening. The air crackles, somewhere in the distance. A blackbird starts up its morning song, blithely unaware that the world as it knows it is about to go up in smoke. You're not alone. Of course, behind you, the tribe know. The nation waits. Your people's hair is stiff with blue woad and hope, and your warriors have painted their faces with wild designs that are equal parts intimidation, and maybe just a touch of personal branding. You catch the scent of sweat, crushed sage, and the metallic tang of nervous anticipation. And then there's the sound, the shuffle and clank of weapons, the hushed murmur of last-minute blessings from the druids, the soft, almost timid sniffs from the two youngest girls who insisted on coming despite their mother's protests. It would be a lie to say you aren't scared. The Romans are terrifying in their own right, all gleaming helmets and matching sandals, their faces pinched as if they're perpetually disappointed by British weather. Their stone temple to Claudius sits fat and smug in the center of Camulodunum, rising above thatched roofs like a sore tooth. You remember when it was still sacred ground, back before marble columns and Latin curses and the sound of marching boots at dawn. But today, it's not fear you taste on your tongue. It's something sharper rage, and maybe a pinch of glee. You raise your arm, and there's a ripple through the crowd. The signal. At first, it's just a few pebbles and an arrow whistling overhead, landing somewhere near a half-eaten Roman lunch. Then, like a flock startled into flight, it's everything at once: a rain of stones, a storm of spears, the roar of hundreds of throats turned loose. You're running before you know it, long hair streaming behind, woad stripes glowing like blue fire. Your legs are strong from years of chasing after daughters and goats and, more recently, angry tax collectors. The first wave hits the edge of town. They're shouting in Latin, high and clipped. The kind of panicked scolding that probably worked on slaves and children, but not on a mob like this. A Roman auxiliary, poor lad, turns just in time to see a hail of slingshot stones coming his way. He ducks, trips, and lands in a chicken coop, where he's immediately set upon by a gaggle of hens and 3 irate grandmothers. You press forward, and the village erupts into chaos. Thatched roofs catch fire, whether by accident or design. Who can say? And suddenly the smell of smoke and roasting grain fills the air. A chorus of shouts, curses, prayers, and more than a few delighted shrieks as your side surges through the narrow lanes. You spot your neighbor, Old Era, brandishing a rolling pin with the confidence of a woman who's broken up more pub brawls than most Roman centurions have eaten hot dinners. The Romans, for all their discipline and drill, simply weren't ready for this. Some managed to rally near the temple, shields up, the famous testudo formation locking them into a shell of brass and bravado. For a moment, you almost admire them. Then someone upends a barrel of honey on their helmets, and a swarm of angry bees erupts from the granary ruins, instantly reducing the elite Roman defense to a jittery, screaming mess. Nature, you decide, is very much on your side. As the fighting rages, you move from street to street, calling orders, hauling the wounded to safety, whispering fierce encouragements into the ears of every terrified girl and wild-eyed warrior you pass. You hear the pop and snap of burning timbers, the crash of pottery, the strange, musical ring of sword on bronze. There's a moment when a Roman officer tries to parley, waving a white scrap and shouting something about civilization and mutual understanding. He's quickly drowned out by a shower of spoiled turnips and at least one well-aimed duck. But it isn't all fury and farce. There are losses, of course there are. Your cousin Eddern, always first into trouble and last out, is struck down in the square. You kneel beside him for a heartbeat, brushing the dirt from his face, and promise him that none of this will be in vain. Around you, the air thickens with the grief of 100 such farewells, woven through with defiance. The tears, you find, dry quickly when there's work still to be done. By noon, the city is yours, The smoke rises in wild, joyous banners trailing toward the gods. The great temple the Romans' pride and joy cracks and collapses, the marble groaning like some wounded beast. You do not rejoice over the bodies. You are not here for revenge alone. You are here to reclaim something older, something almost forgotten, your people's right to stand tall, to speak their own language, to remember the names of their gods without fear. Your warriors gather in the ruins, faces flushed with victory, eyes shining and ringed with ash. Someone starts a song, and soon the whole mob is singing loud, ragged, beautifully off-key. You see the girls who braved the march to the city clasping hands, their woad streaks smeared with soot and pride. There are losses, but there is hope, too. A strange, bright hope that tastes like bread after fasting. As dusk falls, you climb the steps of the ruined temple and look out across the broken city. Far in the west, the sun dips behind the trees, and you can almost hear the Roman governor's distant wailing as the news reaches him, a sound sweeter than any harp. The air cools, carrying the scent of earth, ash, and freedom. You know this is only the beginning. The Romans will come angry, organized, and out for blood. But for tonight, Britannia breathes again, wild and unbroken. You let the song carry you, and for a moment, everything's smoke, pain, triumph. Loss melds together into something as old as the stones beneath your feet. You close your eyes, listening to the wind, the laughter, the stories beginning all over again. A hush, and breathe. Morning doesn't so much arrive as stumble in, bruised and bewildered after the night before. You open your eyes in a tangle of smoke-scented cloaks, dew collecting in your hair, and for a split second, you almost forget you're the most wanted woman in Britannia. Then you roll over, hear a snore, a groan, and the clatter of someone tripping over a helmet in the half-light. Reality returns. The city of Camulodunum lies gutted behind you, a scar in the land. A lesson in hubris for anyone who thought a marble temple could outlast 1,000 years of stubborn British mud. It's breakfast. If you can call it that, handfuls of barley bread, smoked fish, whatever fruit survived the chaos and didn't get trampled underfoot. Children sneak extra mouthfuls, dogs bark, chasing crows off the spoils. The air is heavy with the ghosts of last night, some sorrow, some pride, and a strange excitement buzzing beneath your skin. Your daughters are somewhere nearby, sharing secrets with the girls who have already begun to swap stories, polishing the first draft of legend. "Did you see her?" they whisper. "She was like a storm, hair flying, spear raised. The Romans ran from her shadow." You allow yourself a brief, private smile. Fame is always more flattering from a distance, but time presses on you like a hand on your shoulder. You're not just a mother or a queen or a tale to be told at firesides. You're a leader, and the next step is obvious Londinium, that bustling, greedy port city on the Thames, half Roman, half Briton, all trouble. Your scouts return with news the merchants are packing. Roman officials are panicking, and the streets are choked with carts, livestock, and rumors. Everyone's heard what happened at Camulodunum. Everyone expects you now. The march begins in fits and starts, your ragtag army stretching along the rutted roads like a migrating herd, some armed with swords pried from Roman hands, others with farm tools, slings, or just fierce eyes and sharper tongues. Druids walk among the ranks, muttering prayers to gods older than stone, here and there. Warriors from other tribes join the throng, their accents strange, their banners fluttering with new allegiance. You see boys trying to walk like men, and men trying to remember the boys they used to be before the world demanded so much blood. You keep the pace steady, not hurried. There's power in moving together, in letting word spread ahead like wildfire. Every mile is marked by burnt-out villas, abandoned farms, the ruins of Roman arrogance, places where taxes once squeezed your people dry, where land was stolen with ink and seal and Latin legalese no Briton could ever hope to understand. At one crossroads, an old woman offers you a jug of mead and a curse for every Roman who ever passed her gate. Make them pay. "Daughter," she croaks, and you toast her with a laugh and a promise. The landscape shifts as you travel south, and east fields give way to marshes. The river glimmers silver in the distance, and the air thickens with the promise of something big at dusk. You pause on a low hill and look back. The sky glows red with fires you did not start, but will not mourn. If you squint, you can almost see the lines of history being rewritten, one smoky sunrise at a time by the third day. The column has swelled. Word travels faster than horse or wheel. Now even the forest seems alive with whispers. Children run alongside, hoping for a glimpse of you, the tall, red-haired queen whose anger has become a kind of weather. A few Roman refugees cross your path, faces drawn, possessions clutched to their chests. Some beg for mercy in broken Brythonic. Some try bribes. A few simply fall to their knees. You are not the monster they fear, nor the saint they beg for. Justice is hard, and war is harder. Sometimes you give a nod and let them pass. Sometimes you look away and let your warriors decide. Mercy and vengeance are two sides of the same battered shield. At campfires each night, stories grow. Warriors recount their deeds with generous embellishments. Children practice their war shouts, and the druids perform rites for the fallen smoke, curling into the dark like a private language for the gods. Someone gifts you a new cloak, woven with blue and gold threads, to wear in Londinium, they say. Your daughters help you braid your hair, fingers nimble, faces serious. Are you scared? Mother, one of them asks, voice barely a whisper. Every day, you admit, but I'm more scared of letting them win. She nods, understanding more than you'd like. Sleep is a tangle of dreams, fields of bones, cities of fire, Roman eagles dropping feathers in surrender. You wake before dawn, eyes gritty, heart thudding. In the quiet, you wonder if you will survive the stories being written about you. It's a small, private thought. Then someone calls your name and the morning begins again. As you approach Londinium, the mood sharpens. Scouts report Roman forces gathering, but the city is divided. Half are ready to flee, half determined to defend their walls. The merchants clutch their ledgers, the priests of Mercury wring their hands. A few desperate souls hoist the old British banners, hoping to guess which way the wind will blow. You smell the river long before you see it, a mix of brine, rot, and the sweat of 10,000 anxious souls. The city comes into view, ringed with half-built walls and shanty suburbs. The Thames flashes with the traffic of panicked traders. You see the smoke of hasty cooking fires, hear the bleating of sheep, the shouts of orders barked in both Latin and Brythonic. You pause atop a ridge, army fanned out behind you, and let yourself take in the sight. You remember the first time you saw Londinium, years ago, a patchwork market town, lively, greedy, curious. You wonder, as you stand there in your war paint and borrowed cloak, whether any city is worth all this blood. Then you remember the lashes on your back, your daughter screams, and you feel the answer burn in your chest. The druids come forward, chanting low, laying hands on your shoulders, anointing you with oil and words. Your warriors tighten their grips on their weapons, faces fierce in the rising light. The city's fate hangs in the balance, quivering like an arrow before release. You take a breath. A hush falls. History, you think, tastes like smoke and iron and tomorrow. Londinium will learn your name. A hush and breathe. You wake to the metallic taste of fog in your mouth, eyes gritty with dust, the earth beneath your cheek cold and unyielding. For a moment, it's just you and the quiet before dawn, the hush before the city screams. Then a raven croaks from a dying elm, and you remember today. You are the storm that breaks Londinium, not a mother, not a widow, not even a queen, but the vengeance in the air, heavy as thunderclouds. Your hands shake as you lace your cloak, though you tell yourself it's only the morning chill. Right, as if nerves have nothing to do with it. Londinium lies below, crouched on the muddy banks of the Thames, its wooden houses packed tighter than secrets in a priest's confessional. The city is half-finished walls, Roman arrogance in marble and brick, and the tangled back streets of market stalls that smell of boiled cabbage, spilled wine, horse dung, and the sweat of merchants who'd sell their own grandmothers for a decent profit. You can hear it all a low, nervous hum punctuated by the slap of sandals and the whimpering of livestock who, to be fair, probably have a more accurate grasp of the situation than most humans today. Your scouts return in 2s and 3s, faces grim. The Roman governor, Suetonius Paulinus, he of the iron jaw and the let's just burn it and march on school of leadership, has decided to abandon the city. He'll save his legions, he says. Regroup up north and let the barbarians have their day. You're not offended by the nickname. Barbarians make their own rules. It's the have their day part that stings. You're planning on having much more than a day. By sunrise, the city is chaos. Roman citizens, mostly merchants and their families, scramble for space on overloaded boats, desperate to flee east down the Thames. Others jam the north gate, clutching what little they can carry: jewelry, coins, even a battered laurel wreath or two, just in case anyone's judging most tragic Roman exit. You watch from your perch on a ruined villa's roof. The air is sharp with panic and the smoke of hurried bonfires. Even the sky looks uneasy, streaked in dirty peach and anxious gray. Your army gathers, thousands strong. Not a polished force, no neat rows or gleaming standards here, but a sea of faces hardened by hunger, grief, and the promise of retribution. They carry all manner of weapons, from Roman swords to sickles, axes, clubs, and, for one particularly creative fellow, a sharpened sheep's jawbone. Children peer out from behind their mothers' cloaks. The druids begin their chanting, arms raised, voices weaving through the clamor. You look down at your hands, smeared with woad, and think, if I survive this, I'll never get the blue out of my nails. The order to advance is less a command than a release, a dam breaking after too many seasons of flood. Your warriors surge forward with a roar that rattles window shutters and stuns the city's defenders into momentary silence. For all their fear, the Romans left a token garrison, maybe hoping to buy time or stage a final show of dignity. It lasts about as long as a bowl of stew at a hungry man's table. The defenders are swept aside, their shields clattering to the cobbles, their Latin curses drowned in the howl of your people. You step through the city gate, the scent of smoke and fear thick as syrup. Every street is a rabbit warren of confusion screams, shouts, crashes as carts overturn and pottery shatters. There is looting. Of course, some warriors can't resist the lure of silk, silver, amphorae of wine, or just the joy of smashing things that once belonged to those who spat on their kin. A few too few keep their heads, herding captives to the square, checking doors for hidden soldiers. You try to keep a grip, to be both flame and shield, but vengeance is a slippery companion. Midday, and Londinium is burning. The fire catches fast-dried timbers, pitch roofs, hay for the market stalls. Flames leap from building to building like gossips with a fresh scandal. You move through the chaos, your daughters at your side, faces set somewhere. A Roman noblewoman tries to bribe you with a necklace heavy as her fear. You take it, but only to buy a little silence. You send her on her way. Out the north gate, mercy is a strange coin in war, and you never know when you'll need change. A chorus of song rises over the clamor. Someone starts a war chant, pounding on shields. And for a moment, the noise of the city dissolves into a rhythm older than Rome itself. You see children with soot-streaked faces, elderly warriors leaning on broken spears, and for a heartbeat, you wish you could freeze time here before the smoke chokes, before the tears begin, but the city keeps burning, and you're swept along by sunset. The city is ash, the river glowing orange as the sky drops its curtain. The ruins hiss and pop. You stand on a heap of fallen stone, perhaps a Roman bank, or a forum, or just another monument to someone else's story. You feel tired, hollow, triumphant, guilty. Your daughters huddle close, silent. Some warriors celebrate, waving looted treasures. Others count the cost injuries, dead. The faces missing from the morning roll call. When the fires die, the wind turns. It brings the smell of the river and something else: regret. Maybe. You gather your leaders by torchlight. There are new plans to make. The Romans will return. You know, Suetonius is no coward, but for tonight, Londinium is yours. A city reborn in smoke and memory. As you walk through the ruins, a child hands you a charred laurel wreath, scavenged from the rubble. You set it on your head, just for a laugh. Queen Boudica, someone whispers. Queen of ashes, you smile. Because sometimes victory is bitter and sweet, and all you can do is stand in the ruins and remember, a hush, and breathe. You wake to the crackling of embers and the gentle clatter of a makeshift camp. your warriors stretched out across a battered field north of Londinium, the ashes of the city still painting the horizon a dirty bronze. Your hair is matted with sweat, and your hands smell of wood smoke. But you're alive, and for the first time in weeks. The air is strangely light. Birds have returned to the trees, as if they too are taking back this battered land, swooping low and reckless, snatching crumbs from last night's bread, scattering feathers on bloodied grass. Someone's playing a bone flute badly, but it makes you smile. It's almost enough to trick you into thinking this is just a fair day, not the aftermath of a rebellion. You gather your cloak and rise, boots squelching in the mud around you. The camp is stirring, warriors rubbing their eyes, grumbling over cold meat, or arguing about which Roman trinkets are worth the most at the next market. The druids are already up, faces streaked with paint and soot, hands tracing signs in the air as they whisper to the old gods, perhaps asking for protection, perhaps just hoping for a warm fire and no more funerals. You pass them by, offering a nod, and find yourself caught in a moment of rare peace. It will not last. Of course, peace, in your world, is as fragile as a Roman wine cup looks lovely, shatters at the first insult. Your daughters meet you at the edge of camp, one plaiting the other's hair, both somehow managing to look both exhausted and wild with purpose. They've tasted the heady mix of fear and victory, and it's left them sharper, older, almost unrecognizable from the girls who once tiptoed through dew-soaked grass at home. What next, mother, they ask, as if you alone can bend the wind and predict which direction doom will blow next. You grin, because there's nothing else to do, and point north, toward the next town on your map, the next red mark on your growing list of places to make the Romans regret ever inventing sandals. The road is nothing like the imperial highways. The Romans build no neat rows of flat stones, no mile markers, no stern-faced statues to keep watch. This is an old track, beaten out by generations of traders, hunters, and the occasional wild boar with places to be. You march at the head of your people, your feet sinking into soft earth, the sun a watery coin behind shifting clouds. The smell is part spring, part decay, and every now and then, you catch a whiff of heather or crushed fern, at times. The path dips through woods, shadows flickering over your hands, the hush broken only by the grumble of carts and the distant gossip of magpies. Someone laughs too loudly, someone else shushes them, as if afraid the ghosts of Londinium might follow, dragging the night behind them. But not all is celebration. As you pass through burned fields and toppled mileposts, you see the toll this uprising has taken: houses looted, farms abandoned, horses limping on bandaged legs. Some villages welcome you with bread and stories, grateful that someone finally stood up to the iron fist of Rome. Others look on with haunted eyes, unsure if your victory will mean freedom or just new masters. The world is changing, and you can feel the old certainties slipping away beneath your feet like river stones in a spring flood. Your warriors are a strange, beautiful mess, half wild, half disciplined, many drunk on the taste of triumph and the cheap Roman wine pilfered from city cellars. They boast, sing, sometimes quarrel, but beneath the noise, you sense the tension rising. Victory is a heady thing, but it's also hungry. If you don't keep moving, keep fighting, it might turn inward, chewing up your unity with jealousy, pride, or plain old boredom. The Druids know this, and so do you. At every new camp, you call councils by the fire, sharing bread and bitter stories, listening for the first whisper of division, always ready to laugh too loudly or glare too long. And then the sky begins to change. The clouds roll in, thicker and darker, pressing low until the whole world feels smaller, more intimate, as if you're living inside a battered drum. Rain spits, then pours, soaking cloaks, dousing fires, running in muddy rivulets through the camp. You huddle under an oak, your hair plastered to your face, watching as children chase each other in the wet, their laughter piercing the gloom. See? Mother one shouts, spinning in circles, arms wide. We're not beaten yet. And for a moment, you believe them. But news travels faster than even your swiftest runner. From the north, scouts return with grave faces. Suetonius has not disappeared. He is gathering his legions, the survivors of Camulodunum, Londinium, Verulamium, all the battered, angry soldiers who have seen their world turn to ash by your hand. They say he's chosen his ground carefully, on an open plain, a narrow defile at his back, no city to defend, no civilians to shield. He is baiting you, drawing you out, offering you a battle you cannot refuse. Your leaders argue some urge caution, others blood. The druids whisper warnings of Roman cunning and dark omens in the entrails of last night's supper. You listen to them all, but in your bones, you already know the storm is coming, and you are running straight into it. As night falls, you gather your daughters, holding them close, your breath tangled with their hair. You watch the flames gutter and the shadows lengthen, and you try to memorize this moment, the warmth, the closeness, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow you will be more than a story told in fear and longing. The wind howls, a hush, and breathe. You wake before dawn, though honestly, you hardly slept. The world is gray and cold, the kind of chill that slides down your neck and settles in your bones. You can smell horses wet, restless, snorting in the fog as your warriors shuffle around camp, trying to appear brave, or at least too busy for dread. Someone cracks a joke about Roman underpants. It falls flat. Nobody wants to think about underpants when you're about to face the full force of the empire. You walk through the sea of bodies, past your daughters and the old men painting blue spirals down their arms. Each swirl is a wish for victory, a prayer, a challenge to the gods, or maybe just a superstition. But at this point, who's keeping track one by one? Your people rise, shaking off the sleep, their faces shining in the half-light like ghosts of old Britain. Some braid flowers into their hair, others sharpen rusty swords, pretending it makes a difference. You don't give a grand speech. That's for the bards, or maybe for Roman generals who love the sound of their own voices. Instead, you nod to your closest chiefs, and they pass your message along in low voices. Stand, hold the line, remember home. If you fall together. No one gets left behind. The world sharpens as you march toward the field Suetonius has chosen. A broad, flat plain, hemmed in by thick forests on both sides, and a ridge at your back, a perfect place for an ambush. If you were Roman, or just an honest slaughterhouse. If you're the ones being drawn in, you can almost see the Roman mind at work here, tight formation. Narrow approach, nowhere to run. You think for a heartbeat about turning back. But you know as well as Suetonius does, there's no running. Not now. You gather behind your wagons, the women and children huddled behind, the warriors fanned out in a jagged crescent, spears and axes raised high. The ground is sticky with mud, trampled and pocked by countless hooves and wheels. The air is thick with the stink of bodies, smoke, and something else metal, maybe, or just fear turned sour. Across the plain, the Romans move like a machine, shields locked, spears bristling, banners catching what little sunlight there is. You squint, trying to find Suetonius himself, probably standing with his officers, arms folded, that smug Roman smirk hidden under his helmet. The drums begin, slow and deep, beating like a second heartbeat in your chest, and then noise, all at once. Screams, horns, the stamp of feet. Your army surges forward, a tidal wave of bodies, bright hair flying, war cries shaking the morning mist. The ground seems to tremble. You feel it in your teeth for a glorious moment. You believe the Romans falter at the first charge, shields denting, a few falling back. Your chariots dart in and out, flinging spears, horses frothing. You see one Roman go down, then another. There's a cheer, a wild, reckless noise that erupts from every throat at once. You press forward. You will break them. But the machine holds. The Roman line flexes but doesn't snap. They shift, closing ranks, presenting a wall of shields, jabbing with short swords, relentless, cold, like the tide grinding down a sandcastle. The front ranks of your warriors smash against that wall, again and again. But each time the Romans give ground, it's only to draw you deeper into the trap. You fight, because what else is there? The mud clings to your feet, blood spatters your tunic, sticky and hot, not always yours, around you. Friends fall, faces contorted in anger, pain, surprise. The world shrinks to the circle of your own arms, the weight of your sword, the cries of your daughters fighting beside you. The Romans begin to push back. They move with dreadful efficiency, hacking and stabbing, shields tight, eyes empty. There is no music here, no poetry, only the dull drumbeat of boots and the hiss of blades. You hear the screaming, but it's far away, like gulls over a distant sea. You try to rally your people, shouting, grabbing arms, shoving bodies back toward the line. For a second, it almost works. A knot of warriors gathers, fighting as one, pushing the Romans back a step, then another. But there are too many. The line folds, and the Romans pour in like water through a broken dam. You see your daughters swept away, one disappearing in the press, another swinging wildly at a legionary twice her size. Your vision blurs, you taste iron and ash. You stumble, trip over a fallen warrior, scramble to your feet. The sky is full of smoke. The field is nothing but chaos, clashing bodies, spilled banners, wagons burning at the edges. There is a moment, suspended and sharp. When you realize it is over, the Romans are everywhere. The screams have changed, become ragged, pleading, then silent. The wind shifts, carrying the sour tang of defeat. And you know this is the end of your uprising, the end of this wild, impossible hope. You drop to your knees in the mud, staring at blood on your hands, the broken haft of your spear. Around you, the last pockets of resistance collapse, swallowed up by iron and fire. You look for your daughters, your people. The world tilts, unsteady, and all you can do is breathe just once, slow and deep. The earth cool against your face. A hush, and breathe. You come to, not with a start, but as if drifting out of a deep, heavy dream, the kind where you run through mist and voices, but never reach the door. All around you is silence, the hush that always follows calamity. When the world has run out of noise, and even the wind hesitates, as if afraid to disturb the field's exhausted ghosts. The mud beneath your cheek has grown cold. You taste it on your lips, bitter as old sorrow. There's a pain in your side, but it feels distant, as if it belongs to someone else entirely. For a moment, you can't remember where you are. The sky overhead is bleached and empty, clouds drifting like the pale sails of lost ships. Then memory seeps back in a surge of bodies, screams, the jostle and crush of warriors, daughters' faces streaked with blue, the hard rhythm of Roman steel. Your uprising, your last stand, has ended. Not in glory, but in the hush that always follows the breaking of hope. Slowly, you rise, knees trembling, head pounding with every heartbeat. You stagger past the remnants of your world-shattered wagons, the burned-out hulk of a chariot, scraps of tartan, a single shoe abandoned in the mud. The air is thick with smoke and the sweet, ugly smell of things better left unnamed. Here and there, the last of your people drift like shades among the bodies, some searching, some weeping, most simply sitting in stunned silence, as if waiting for someone to tell them what comes next. You know, though, the Romans will not be merciful. They never are, even now. You can hear their shouts in the distance, the crack of whips, the dull thud of boots as they comb the field for survivors, for loot, for anything of value. You duck behind a burned wagon, heart in your throat, hoping you are invisible, just one more shadow in the wreckage. Maybe, just maybe, they will pass you by, but it's not fear that fills you, not anymore. It's something else, something heavier, almost serene. This is what it feels like to lose everything. You think, to become part of the land, to blend into the stones and the wind, until even your name becomes a rumor, a sigh among the reeds by the river. For a moment, you almost laugh. Isn't this what you wanted to be remembered, if not as a queen, then as a force of nature unruly, unstoppable, the woman who made the empire tremble? You think of your daughters, you think of your people, what's left of them. Some will scatter, vanishing into the forests, the hills, the fog. Some will be caught, dragged away in chains, their lives unspooling in far-off places, stories diluted, names forgotten. But the story of Boudica, your story has already slipped from your hands and begun to grow in the mouths of others. You hear the whispers as you move through the wreckage, like little scraps of song. She fought like a goddess. She called down thunder. She rode into battle with her hair blazing red as the setting sun. The truth is messier, you think, But the legend is already at work, painting you in bolder colors than life itself could manage. You wander the edges of the battlefield, collecting what you can: an old brooch, a piece of carved bone, a ragged strip of linen that still carries the scent of home. Here and there, you kneel beside the fallen, murmuring a name, a memory, a fragment of a song you used to sing when the world was simpler. The Romans can burn your villages, break your armies, erase your monuments, but they can't reach into the fog of memory and pluck you out, far off. The crows are already gathering, sharp-eyed and greedy. The Romans will strip this place clean. You know, just as they always do. They'll pile the bodies, count the spoils, build another monument to their own greatness, and move on, leaving only scars in the earth and stories in the air. The day stretches, long and thin, over a field that has forgotten joy. By evening, you find a place in the shadow of a half-burned tree, trunk split by lightning long ago, a perfect place. You think, for endings. You sit, back against the bark, and let the ache in your bones spread out and settle. Maybe someone will find you here. Maybe not. Maybe your name will ride the wind all the way to Rome. Or maybe it will fade, soft and stubborn, into the dirt. And then, in the last light of day, as the sun bleeds itself away behind the hills, you feel the quietest thing of all: peace. Not victory, not revenge, just peace, raw and threadbare as a winter blanket. You did what you could, you fought, you lost, and now you are free in a way the Romans will never understand. You close your eyes, listening to the world as it exhales. The stories are already beginning, carried on the hush of the evening breeze, embroidered by every tongue that needs a hero, or a warning, or simply a name to whisper in the dark. You are Boudica. You are ashes and memory. You are what remains. A hush and breathe. You'd think the end of a rebellion would sound like a victory parade cheering, trumpets, sandals slapping triumphantly on stone, maybe the odd burst of celebratory wine in a senator's cup. But out here, in the battered east of Britannia, what you actually hear is something quieter and more unsettling: the steady, methodical sounds of order being reimposed. The scrape of Roman spades digging mass graves, the steady clink of hammers setting up new milestones along the roads, as if the very earth itself needs to be told to behave, somewhere far off. A dog barks, lonely and hollow, and you wonder if even he knows things have changed. The air is thick with the smell of wet ashes and something medicinal: Roman soldiers pouring vinegar on their wounds, cleaning their swords, and pretending not to glance nervously at the tree line. You're not one of them, but tonight, you might as well be a ghost, drifting among their camps, invisible and ignored. A few huddled Britons trudge by, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. You hear bits of Latin, barked orders, and now and then, a word in your own tongue, almost unrecognizable for how brittle and lost it sounds. The Romans move quickly, as they always do, before the smoke has even finished curling above the last ruined hut. Their surveyors are back out with their wax tablets and their endless, exhausting enthusiasm for straight lines. They love nothing more than to draw boundaries, set up milestones, declare which village belongs to which god, and, just for good measure, build a new shrine to Nemesis, because clearly, if any goddess deserves a tip of the helmet this week, it's her. Already, statues are going up, not of you. Of course, if there's anything the Romans dislike more than a rebellion, it's a rebel with a name that sticks. So it's Tacitus and Suetonius who will get the marble, the bronze, the inscriptions' names chiseled so deeply into stone that future generations will trip over them on their way to the bathhouse. Your name, if it's mentioned at all, will come out of Roman mouths as the queen of the barbarians or the wife of the late Prasutagus, may he rest, etc., etc. They say it as if you were a footnote in a story about infrastructure. Let's be honest, no one rewrites like the Romans. They have a way of making even disaster look tidy in the record books. You can picture a senator in Rome, elegant toga, sandals cleaned of all mud and regret, dictating to his scribe. And then the situation in Britannia was efficiently handled, the local disturbances suppressed, and the dignity of the empire restored. See also improved roads, grain quotas, and the resumption of scheduled tax collection. You almost have to admire it. If history is written by the winners, it's copy edited by the really fastidious ones. But even the Romans can't erase everything. You spot, just out of sight of the nearest camp, a few girls weaving wildflowers into their hair. The old women mutter charms as they pass the ruins, hiding a splinter of iron in their skirts, spitting on the ground for luck. The men keep their hands tight on their axes, eyes always searching the horizon, as if still waiting for a signal to rise up again. Every so often, a Roman patrol pauses, scanning the landscape for trouble. Everyone knows that in this country. Peace is something you only ever rent by the day. They rebuild Londinium, of course, bigger and colder and even less friendly than before, with new forums and public baths and a whole army of bureaucrats who, frankly, could sour the taste of honey. Where there used to be bustling marketplaces and painted wagons, now there are Roman milestones, guards posted at every gate, and those insufferable lists who owns what, who's paid their tribute, who gets to keep their sheep, and who doesn't. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the ledgers breeding in the dark corners of the tax offices. A generation from now, they'll tell stories in Rome about how the empire civilized the wild Britons. They'll point to their temples, their roads, their great stone walls as if you couldn't build a wall yourself. Given half the workforce and 1,000 shovels, no one will mention the burned fields, the ruined villages, the hollowed-out look in the eyes of your people. Progress, they'll call it. And maybe it is. It just smells a lot like smoke and costs a lot more than anyone will ever admit. You, Boudica, are nowhere to be found in their official ceremonies. Your name becomes a cautionary tale, a whisper in the barracks, a warning etched into the laws. Don't let the women get ideas. Don't let the Britons remember. And yet, after dark, in the little rooms where Roman and Briton meet, in the uneasy truce of shared bread and winter, your story comes back. The soldiers want to know. Is it true she cursed the governor with her last breath? Did she really ride a chariot painted with blood? The locals nod, say nothing, and let the silence do its work. Every once in a while, an ambitious Roman officer gets posted here, dreaming of glory. He orders new roads, new forts, new rules. His men grumble. The woods loom. At night, the wind howls through the branches, and you can almost hear your own name, rattling in the dark, refusing to lie quietly in the neat Roman archives. You realize now that this is what victory looks like for an empire tidy, orderly, a place for everything and everyone in their place, except for the things that won't stay put. The ashes of your rebellion mixed with the dust in the corners of new-built Roman rooms, swept away but never quite gone. The statues go up, the history scrolls fill, and yet somewhere, always, a dog howls at night, and a story persists that can't quite be rewritten. A hush, and breathe. The thing about legends, real legends, not the ones polished for school books or stamped on coins, is that they always find the tiniest cracks to slip through. No matter how many times the Romans set fire to your villages or commission another marble statue of some forgettable governor, your story, your name keeps rising up like wildflowers through the paving stones. You don't need an epic poem. You don't need a shrine or a scroll. All you need is a whisper, a sigh, the memory of a war cry carried in the blood. You, Boudica, are supposed to fade away now, at least. That's the plan. The Empire has swept your memory into a neat corner. Officially, you are gone, vanished, like smoke after rain. The Romans are busy with their triumphs and treaties, patting each other on the back and toasting their own efficiency, never realizing that your story is already slipping from their ledgers into the world of rumor and song. They try to erase you, but they only make you stronger. You sense it first in the eyes of the children, wide as coins, pressing close to the fire when the old tales are spun. The adults hush them, don't make trouble, don't speak her name too loudly. You never know who might be listening, but the children are cleverer than they look. They memorize every detail, the chariot's rattling wheels, the red hair streaming behind you like a pennant of defiance, the wild shout that cracks the night open. They practice your scowl and your swagger behind the sheep pens. making weapons from sticks, pretending to storm the Roman gates with nothing but mud and a borrowed name. The mothers, too. Keep your memory close, not out of romance, but out of stubborn. Everyday anger, the kind that grows from bad harvests, hard winters, and the way the Romans never pronounce anyone's name quite right. They wear their hair a little longer. They teach their daughters to braid wildflowers into their plaits. A silent code, remember. When the tax collector turns up with his ledgers, it's your story that simmers in their silence. The bards, gods bless them, never let you rest. If you could see them now, half drunk, half genius, making poetry out of leftover stew and someone else's misfortune, you'd probably roll your eyes. But they keep your name alive, plucking it on lyres, slipping it into songs that sound innocent until the Romans catch a certain look in the crowd and decide, perhaps, it's time to move on to the next village. The tune is catchy. Even the Roman soldiers hum it when they think no one's listening. At the sacred springs, the women still leave offerings, bits of metal, a twist of wool, a carved piece of bone. They mutter your name for luck, for vengeance, for courage. You've become more than a queen. You're a spell, a warning, a promise. If Boudica could stand against the world, so can you. And if you fall, at least you'll make a story worth telling. Who needs a happy ending, anyway? Years pass, decades. Londinium grows fat and lazy, flush with Roman gold and boredom. The streets get straighter, the laws get stricter. But beneath it all, there's always that undercurrent of resistance. Every time a woman raises her voice in council, every time a man glares just a little too long at a passing patrol, every time the wind rattles the shutters, just right there you are, flickering in the candlelight, refusing to disappear. A scholar in Rome, centuries later, will puzzle over a half-burned scroll and wonder why the stories of Britannia are always so stubborn, so impossible to nail down. He'll scribble your name in the margin, Boudica. Boudica, never quite sure how to spell it, always certain he's missing something. He'll sip his wine, sigh, and mutter that barbarians have no sense of order. But you'll grin in the shadows, knowing that order is for the conquerors, and memory is for the conquered. And here's the delicious irony: the Romans, for all their power, end up doing you a favor. Their own chroniclers, Tacitus and Cassius Dio, decide that your story is too wild to ignore. They write you down, reluctant but fascinated, turning your rebellion into the kind of cautionary tale that keeps senators awake at night. Don't let this happen again. They warn, but warnings have a way of sounding like invitations. The centuries roll on, empires fall, walls crumble, and the roads crack open. Saxons, Normans, kings and queens, everyone gets their turn. But your story doesn't belong to any of them. It belongs to the wind that howls across the heath, to the crows that circle over old battlefields, to the restless dreams of those who refuse to accept their place. Now and then, a queen with a taste for drama borrows your name. Statues are built, poems are written. Some clever playwright in a velvet doublet tries to guess what you really said in your last hour, and gets it all wrong, but the audience loves it. Meanwhile, in quiet moments, a girl in a storm-racked cottage looks out over the fields and whispers your name, wondering if she too can make her own fate. A tired mother tucks her child in with stories of a warrior queen who wouldn't let go. An old man at the edge of a dying fire mutters your legend, half believing it was all a dream, but smiling just the same. So, here's how you become immortal. Boudica, not with monuments or laws or even revenge, but with stories that cling, generation after generation, refusing to fade. The empire writes you out. The world writes you back in. And somewhere, always, someone is listening, waiting, remembering, ready to run beside your chariot when the wheels thunder through the mists again. A hush, and breathe.